Hey, what's up, YouTube family? It's Brian here. I'm in the studio with Taylor, and we're going to be talking about third doses of the vaccine today, and do you need them? But before we do, subscribe. Because if you're not subscribed to this channel, then you're going to be missing a lot of cool videos like this, and we don't want you to do that. So make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you right now. We'll see you on the next video too.
And that is no joke. And I am wearing glasses today. And when I wear glasses, I don't fucking joke. Okay. So there's no laughs today. This isn't about laughing. This isn't about having a good time. This is about getting roll dog serious.
Serious, super
roll
serious.
dog serious.
Cool.
I'm sure maybe we can find a few jokes along the way. But for real, we want to talk now. Third doses of the vaccine have been hot in my news feed for the last couple of weeks. And I've been interested in talking about it. I've been kind of following along a lot of the news that has been coming out about the third dose, and following along what the CDC and FDA think about it, following along what Israel is doing. Israel has been sort of like at the head of the vaccination arms race, if you will, with their deal that they have with Pfizer, which is basically a vaccine for data agreement where Pfizer provided basically like priority access to vaccine supplies to Israel, because Israel has a centralized healthcare record system where they can really, really quickly share data, like vaccination data of their population with Pfizer super quickly. So they have that agreement. So a lot of stuff comes out of Israel. So anyway, this conversation has been evolving, and I want to talk about a couple of the things that have been going on. And I want to start with basically whether or not we need a COVID-19 booster shot.
Right. And this is good for me because, I got my 2 doses.
Mm-hmm.
I got my 2 doses a couple months ago now. And I've been thinking, do I need a third? And also, I know a lot of people still don't have their first and second doses. So should I get my third before they get either of their first 2 doses?
Right. And those are, and really that kind of encapsulates like the whole conversation that we need to have, that you and I are going to have right now, but then the conversation that countries need to have, and the conversation that countries need to have with each other, especially developed nations that have like advanced vaccination programs, and countries that are like really not able to get their hands on vaccine doses like countries like Canada and the US can. So basically, there's been a lot of different articles, but Bri, you sent me this article just before we started here, which I went through, and this is from nature.com, and Nature is one of the foremost medical journals in the world, and journals on scientific publishing. And essentially, it basically says if you get a third dose of the vaccine, you are 100% boosting your immunity to COVID.
So it's making a difference. Your third dose it's definitely making you more resistant to the virus.
It's making you more resistant to being infected from COVID. And so the sort of, we need to draw a line, and there's a lot of like little nuances with COVID that I feel like the broad population doesn't really get, or maybe just because it's so easy to just like throw gasoline on the dumpster fire that is the COVID conversation, that like these little nuances just get forgotten. But one of the big nuances is, can a nuance be big?
It can be bigger than other nuances.
Is that like if a tree falls in the forest type of question?
Yeah.
So one of the big nuances is the difference between infection and disease. So infection is, do you get it or not? Somebody who's asymptomatic and doesn't feel a thing from COVID and they get it, they're infected by it. They don't get disease by it. And then disease is whether you get like sick, particularly really sick, in the case that you need to go to the hospital. So it seems like through the data that we have now, which is not a lot, because obviously this is evolving all the time. The conversation is changing. New data is coming in all the time from different countries. COVID, you are less likely to be infected by COVID if you were to get a third dose of the vaccine. But your likelihood to get disease from COVID with a third dose is not improved.
Okay. So you're less likely to get it, but you could get just as sick as if you had 2 doses of the COVID vaccine, which is much less than if you have 0 doses of the vaccine too, right?
Right. And ultimately, in my, and this is my opinion, and I think it's a pretty good one because it's mine. So I have pretty high opinions of my own opinion. That the most important thing in the world right now is not getting COVID or not getting COVID. It's not going to the hospital when you get COVID. That has to be really because we've talked at length on the podcast and in different conversations about how this disease, COVID, is going to likely be something that sticks around in our population of the world for a very long time, and it has to be at some point managed in a way that is manageable. And the way to manage a disease that won't go away is to make sure that people aren't going to the hospital, taking up hospital beds, and dying from the disease.
So it's interesting because you said the most important thing is like basically like cutting down the amount of hospitalizations, which would then cut down on the amount of deaths due to the COVID-19 virus, which, yes, I believe is extremely important, but it kind of leads into this other question that needs to be asked when you're considering third doses of the vaccine, especially in countries that have an abundance of COVID-19 vaccines in storage. And so we talk about, like, there was the stat that came out a few weeks ago that Canada had enough vaccine procured to vaccinate the population of the country 5 times over.
Yeah.
And we know that Canada's vaccine effort is going very well. You know, we have much of the population. I think the majority of the population now has both of their doses of the vaccine. And so, but we do know that there are countries in the world that are less than 1% vaccinated.
Yeah.
Or maybe even 0. And so when we talk about people getting their third doses, it kind of begs us to ask the question of, like, you know, if we're prioritizing third doses or booster doses for these wealthier countries who have this stockpile of vaccine, does that mean that we're taking away doses from the countries who still haven't gotten their first or second? The population still hasn't been receiving their first or second doses.
Right. Exactly. And that is that underneath the whole, like, infection versus disease conversation is that, because if your infection immunity goes down a little bit, but the protection against getting really sick stays really high, then you're still very protected. You're protected from the serious part of the disease. And as long as you are still protected from the seriousness of COVID that COVID brings, if that protection is there, then we're basically using up, and this is my opinion, but it's also basically what the science community is saying right now. And again, like, a little asterisk next to that, as in, like, this is evolving. This shit. There's been this article that we're taking from Nature was 5 days ago as we record this today, and I guarantee 5 days from now there will be different information because it's evolving quickly.
Well, the sort of point is that the science still is not in on the on how would it be called the efficacy, how the efficacy of the vaccine is waning over time.
Right.
So people who have received their first or had their second dose 6 months ago, we don't have enough data right now. We haven't been able to look at the data yet on a large enough scale to say, well, the vaccine, 2 doses of the vaccine is this percentage less effective after 6 months or whatever.
They do have that data in Israel specifically because and this is the subject of another conversation.
From the article, it was my understanding they're still parsing through it and trying to
understand. They're still parsing through it, and there are a lot of moving parts that could disrupt the data
not to mention the Delta variant and all these other
right.
things that are happening.
Yeah.
But
So basically they're saying what we know right now is that the efficacy is going to wane over time, which is the case and has been the case for every vaccine ever created. But the protection against serious illness stays high, like in the high 90%.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is the case, as it seems it is right now, then producing now think back to like early days of vaccine. It is a massive effort to try and manufacture enough vaccine doses for a world all at once, for the world population all at once. So now, scientists and the WHO have been really critical of especially wealthier countries administering third doses to their populations.
Didn't the WHO put a moratorium on third doses until the end of September?
Yeah, because they're saying, listen, if your population, like Canada, US, Britain, Israel, any of these countries that are wealthy and have lots of vaccine supply, they're going, guys, if you've got a lot of vaccine right now, please don't go along with these drug manufacturers to use up their manufacturing capacity to make third doses when we need that manufacturing capacity to make doses for the rest of the world that hasn't gotten vaccines yet. And because, we had this conversation on the podcast, the variants and things that can send us off in a new direction with this thing, they are more likely to pop up when you get pockets of populations that have been not vaccinated at all.
It makes me think of two things. I think of one, because I just got a new puppy, I think of feeding my dog and trying to encourage him to eat his food. So he's supposed to get 2/3 of a cup of food 3 times a day. And when I feed him in the morning, I give him his food, and sometimes on a good day, he'll eat it all right away. But sometimes he eats like half or 75% of it and leaves a little bit. And if I was looking at that as the question is my dog full or not? How full is my dog? But I knew that there was another dog that was starving next to it. Would I try to make sure that my dog is as full as possible, or would I take that next scoop of food and maybe share it with the other dog? Because I can almost be sure that if that other dog that's starving doesn't get to eat, then it will probably die. But I can tell that my dog has had at least something,
And this is
I don't know if
those,
that's a good analogy or not, but it feels right just because I got a dog, and it feels like it probably fits this situation.
Okay, try this one on. So it feels very much. I know that drug companies are trying to get their nut in this whole situation. They're not doing this for free. They're making a lot of money, and a third dose. And along the way in this whole vaccine thing, I've been going, dude, somebody's got to make them. And these are the biggest drug companies in the world. They're the biggest drug companies in the world for a reason. They've got the biggest manufacturing capacity. They've got, research and development teams that have been doing this for decades. They are the ones that are in position to fix this problem for us with science. And they're getting their nut along the way, and they're getting paid big time. The third dose feels like a very much a profit machine situation for me.
Yeah. It's a bit of a bonus, a little extra.
Because think about the psychology of it, man. Everybody who's gotten a vaccine in North America, let's say in the US and Canada, everybody who's gotten that vaccine, if there's a third dose available, are you going to go and get it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
You know why? The same reason why when you pull up in the McDonald's drive-thru and they say, "Do you want to upsize your fries for 10 cents?" You're like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
For sure. Because I can.
What if they told you at McDonald's that you could upsize your fries for free? Because we get those vaccines for free.
You're like, why the fuck would I not do that?
Yeah.
The psychology of it is you're going to do it.
The thing that I want to the thing that I want to end this on is talking about a conversation that you and I had when we were biking a few months ago. Actually, it was probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And we were biking along and we were like, I feel like this is the end of the COVID-19 pandemic for us. Sitting here in Nova Scotia, sitting here in Nova Scotia with very few active cases of COVID-19. We're talking like in the double digits or less.
Not even, yeah.
Very few active cases of COVID-19.
Somebody watching outside of Nova Scotia right now is probably like, what
the fuck?
dude, we have like 5 cases of COVID at any given time.
Yeah. And so, but the thing that we were talking about is like, okay, so we are double vaccinated. The majority of the population here is. And so if the rest of the world catches up to where we are, then this should be the end. Like we should be on a downward trend and never go back up again. Like this should be it. But the reality is, and when we had the conversation about global vaccine inequity, which you can listen to on our podcast, we learned that the opportunity for the virus to mutate in these countries that haven't been vaccinated yet will lead to the possible spreading of new variants that our vaccines won't be protective against, and therefore could cycle us back into a whole new phase of pandemic with a virus that we'd need to develop a brand new vaccine for, if possible. Because do you remember at the beginning of this when the conversation was like, hopefully we can develop a vaccine that protects against this, and we weren't even sure if it was possible.
Yeah.
So with that being said, if we're not focusing on getting first and second doses to people in countries that don't have any vaccine right now, then we could very well be prolonging this pandemic.
We could be just leaving the door
open
for another variant that, like we're lucky when variants, when the virus mutates and it mutates into a variant that the vaccine still takes care of.
Yeah.
Because again, the Delta variant, it seems from what we know right now, you might be more likely to get infected by the Delta variant with double vaccination, but you're still just as likely to not get sick.
Yeah.
Like that high serious illness protection is still there in the high 90s, even with Delta. You might be more likely to get it, but you're still just as highly protected to not get sick from it. And that's the important part. But we could be leaving the door open in any number of countries that have that have like little to no vaccine protection in their population to develop a vaccine or to develop a variant that completely changes the trajectory, the positive trajectory that we're on now.
So, guys, let us know what you think. Would you get a third dose if it was made available for you? And do you think that we should be giving out third doses of the vaccine before other countries have access to their first and second doses? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.